When you've worked as hard as Jill Frederickson has in sports media, it's hard to find time to reflect. But that's what we're going to do here today on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, national radio anchor and live sports broadcaster. Jill needs no introduction. She is retired from ESPN, but what a career she had in Bristol, including just recently vice president, production, content strategy, and has worked in motorsports, has worked all over as far as news gathering is concerned on sports centers galore. Jill, I'm excited to have this conversation with you because we're not just going to talk about your career, which obviously bears mentioning, but we're going to learn about your life and what else you're all about. So this is more of like a deeper look, sort of an empathic view of who you are. So I'm excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here, Bryan. Thanks for having me.
So how good of a golfer are you now, knowing that you have a little bit of free time, considering your responsibilities with ESPN aren't as often?
Well, I am not as good as I thought I would be. Isn't that horrible? Like, I just, I feel like you watch things on television, you think, okay, I can do that, right? I just picked up clubs and learned during the pandemic. And then I was working so much, I didn't really have a chance to get practice. And I thought, when I retire, I'm going to start playing a couple times a week and I'm going to get good. Apparently golf doesn't work that way is what I've learned. And so I've been a little frustrated, but it's fun. And I just try to remind myself when I hit bad shots, like, this is a beautiful day. I'm not at work. I'm enjoying myself. I'm meeting new people. I'm learning new things. And then you hit the one really good shot and you're like, okay, that's why I'm coming back. So it's been a little bit slower curve than I thought it was going to be. But I think golf is a hard sport, I'm learning.
When you take on a new challenge like golf and you immerse yourself in it, what parallels, Jill, can you see in the way in which you took on challenges at work, in sports media, at ESPN, in the way in which you love the challenge and you love to take on those challenges?
Well, I think what I've learned about myself, and I think golf kind of showcases this a little bit, is that there are kind of studious learners and there are kind of learners by doing.
Mm.
And I have found that I am a learner by doing. Like, I just immer, like you said, I immerse myself. I learn things. I learn the people. I understand that it's not all written out in books. There aren't necessarily rules. A lot of it is your gut. A lot of it is your feel. And repetition. And I think I've heard some people on your this program before talk a little bit about how you have to prepare so that then when you do come into these situations, there's no rule book of what to do when you're producing live television necessarily, but you try to prepare yourself so that then you're better prepared. You know what to do a little bit easier. It comes a little bit more innately. And so I think that's what I've done in my work is I get to know the people, I get to know the content, I really immerse myself, I really become just all in one with it. And then I kind of let my gut and my experience kind of drive it from there. And it's funny because that's kind of what I've been doing with golf, whereas my husband will, look at videos and read magazines and analyze and do all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I just think I need reps, and let me talk to people and let me learn. So I learn by doing. For me, I think that's been really helpful because at least in sports television, my experience is there isn't always a right way to do it. And so I think, learning by experience and talking to people and learning from their experience has been successful for me.
So there might not be, to use your term, a right way to do things necessarily in some moments. But for you, Jill, what is your best way of doing things? What does that look like?
I think the biggest thing for me is making sure I'm listening to all the smart people around me who everybody comes at things from different perspectives, different experiences, different mindsets, and really making sure I've listened to as many people as possible to then drive forward and make a decision. And I've learned that I don't think I necessarily have to have all the right ideas, but I need to be able to curate the best ideas, from the people around me. And so that's kind of been, I feel like if you if you make sure that enough people are involved in a discussion about, is this, how should we handle this story, or are we saying this the right way? I mean, obviously there's accuracy. I mean, accuracy, you need to be right. You need to have your facts right. But in how much do you do? Where do you put it in the rundown? What's the tone? What are the words you're using? Are they loaded words? Are they not loaded words? Like all these different things, these nuances, I feel like I always felt better having lots of conversations with people and talking through scenarios, and sometimes being the devil's advocate of, say, posing something that maybe I didn't necessarily believe, but hey, well, what if this, just to make sure we were thinking through. I always got worried when everybody was in violent agreement. I'm like, uh-oh, my red flag goes up. Okay, are we all in agreement? Is that right? Have we thought about other perspectives? And I think that's important before you make a decision and things like that.
Jill Frederickson is with me, retired media executive at ESPN. I'm Bryan Fenley. So you talk about thinking things through and loving to listen to other perspectives, and that makes the product even better. Why is it so hard when you're in the throes of that work environment to think through what you're doing and to step back for a moment and allow yourself to sort of take in the moment when there's always that constant 24/7 news cycle, which doesn't always bode well for reflecting and learning about yourself, especially considering just how crazy those moments can be when there's so much going on?
It is hard. I mean, it's always on to the next. It's always what's new. It's always, we're constantly looking forward. And so I think that that's when somebody needs to be in charge of being able to step back. And I think that's when, it's kind of like not everybody just runs to go do. That is a lot of how we're trained, is like, well, what have I done? How did I contribute? All that kind of stuff. And what can I put on my list of how I contributed to this? But sometimes I think the most valuable input is from a step backwards. It wasn't like I pressed that button, or I chose that guest, or I came up with this idea, or we found that tape, or whatever. It's more like, okay, who really looked back and said, what did we miss? Did we miss something? Maybe we need to add this, and are we sure this is how we want to approach this subject? Let's maybe think broader. So I think I think because our industry is so fast moving, we're so reactive. We're always looking for immediate hot takes, all those things. I think it's important to have somebody to try to assign to think the bigger picture. And I'm not sure we always do that, but I always tried to step back, not micromanage, but macro manage, if that makes sense. I kind of just made that up.
That's actually a really good line, and I think we should
You can
maybe
use
put
it.
that on a t-shirt, or put it on some sort of shirt or something. But Jill Frederickson is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. So you've allowed yourself now to step back a little bit, and in doing so, maybe more so than you were able to while at ESPN. Given that you have a little bit more time to think things through, what have you learned about yourself from your ESPN days in terms of getting that more time to reflect now than you did when you were there in the first place? What realizations have come about since then when your mind goes back to those days?
I mean, I don't know if it's a realization, but it's something that's slowly happening more and more as the days go by. Is I find myself, it's easier for me to be present. I think in the past, so absorbed with the 24/7 network, I was overseeing our news operation, not to mention Sports Center, that was on every day, multiple hours a day. And so it didn't matter what day. It wasn't a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It was 7 days a week. We're on the air 24/7. And so everything that happened didn't correlate necessarily with when I was in the office. So I was always thinking, and as things were happening, I was kind of like, well, what do we need to do about that? And it's not just a reaction, but it's trying to think ahead. Like, what are we going to do when this happens? I mean, so I found myself, as much as I, try to be present with my friends and my family and all that, I kind of felt like there was always this little conversation going in the back of my head of checklist. Did I do those things? Like I was just constantly distracted as much as I would try not to be. And so I think now what I'm appreciative of is being able to use this time to be more present, to try to clear my head, to try to get those distractions out of my head. But it's hard. Like, I mean, people do it all the time. Like you're having a conversation with somebody and then somebody just picks up their phone and you're just like, what? Are we having a conversation? But your mind is thinking about something else and you just sort of absentmindedly pick up your phone. And that's kind of how my mind would work. And I'm trying to just be much more, if I'm doing this, I'm all in. I'm not thinking about, all the meetings that I have to set up for tomorrow, or, did I call this person back, or did I give that feedback, or all that, I have this open job and who are these candidates, all those different things that would always be running through my head. I feel like I'm able to, when I'm with somebody and I'm having a conversation like this, I'm able to be fully present. Like you have my full undivided 100% attention. And I hope that whatever my next chapter brings, I'm able to utilize that a little bit more, rather than just, being so scattered.
How open are you to whatever that next chapter could bring?
I mean, it's kind of scary. I don't have a roadmap. And it's exciting, but it's scary. I mean, you and I have talked about my curiosity, so I'm curious about so many things. I'm like, oh, I'm interested in that. Oh, I could do that. But I really want to be thoughtful about it, and I want to do something that's going to be meaningful for me, meaning whether that's something in the community, whether that's, I don't know if I'll ever work in sports media again. It's hard to think about that, but it's, I had a very lovely, wonderful, fulfilling career, that provided me so many opportunities to meet amazing people, go amazing places. I worked at some of the greatest arenas, in sports. I'm proud that I have two girls who, know sports like the back of their hand. And just because they grew up with it, and Sundays about watching football. And I mean, we just have traditions in our family that I wouldn't have had, had I not worked in this industry. But it's okay. I think that I've kind of ended that chapter, and that was 20 years. I mean, from the moment I graduated from college, right into then just this past, April. It was all the time. And so I'm excited. I'm curious. I don't know what it's going to be, but I want to help other people. I think I want it to be more people oriented and less business oriented, I think. But I don't know. Or I might just, stay with my family and get really good at golf. I don't know. We'll see if I can, get that handicap lower. So.
Well, it will continue to get lower, especially when your husband is as dedicated as it sounds he is to watching
Yes.
different swing paths and reading
Yes.
magazines and figuring that
Yes.
out. That's a lot of technical stuff, which, when you're standing over the golf ball, it's really hard to think about all those swing thoughts at once and try to pull them off. You mentioned your daughters. How has your relationship changed with them now, given maybe you have more time with them than
Yeah.
when you were working all the time?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm definitely, like I said, more present. I'm able to, be here, take them places, although my oldest daughter now drives, so that's kind of crazy. I'm not even needed as much of a carpool mom anymore or anything. But I think I'm just able to be more involved in their lives, as opposed to sometimes feeling a little transactional. And I thought a lot about, as I was making this decision, what's the impact of what is the impact of this decision on my daughters? And I hope that, whether they were daughters or sons, that just, helping to show that you can make a decision that's right for you, that might be untraditional, but that's okay, and think it through. It wasn't an impetuous decision. It wasn't just like, I'm mad, I'm leaving. I didn't leave. That part of my life ended, and I was okay with that. And I thought about it for a long time. I thought about the emotional impact, the financial impact, all those things. But I think it's important. I think this new generation also just is more naturally that way. Like there isn't a path that they feel they have to go through. I mean, so many younger people now have so many jobs, I've worked 3 places in my life, and one of them was freelance. So, I mean, I just don't think that's the way this new generation works. So I wanted to really I think it's important to let them know that you can have these thoughtful decisions. You take stock of your life, you figure out what's important to you, and you make decisions and you live with those consequences. And sometimes that'll be a good decision, and sometimes that'll not be a great decision, but you can change them, and I think it's important to just to take stock and reassess, as opposed to, the generation before us was like, work is hard, you shouldn't enjoy it, put your head down, that sort of thing. I think each generation we kind of realize that maybe work and life are much more intertwined. And, the whole buzzword before I left ESPN was work life integration, not balance, but, you integrate them. And I think the pandemic and working from home and figuring out how to better intertwine your life and work, I think we're growing from that. And so, I think that they see that, and they see that, if you work hard, and you create good relationships, you can have choices. And, I'm sure they're probably eager to see what I'm going to do next, or what my husband's going to do next. I mean, so we have an open book, which can be a little daunting, but we're going to just sort of see where it heads.
You were talking there a little bit about your motherly instincts and your traits, and you mentioned the differences in generations. So, what is moments where you find that you are most like your own mom and how you mother, compared to what's different in that realm and how you've sort of taken on a different aspect or mentality into it?
Well, I think the way I'm similar to my mom is it's my mom who introduced me to sports. It's funny. My mom was the one who, was cheering at the TV on Sundays with football and taught me all the terms. And she's the one who took me to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway when I was 14 years old and changed the trajectory of my life. I knew I wanted to do something in motorsports after stepping foot there in 1985. So we're similar in that way. I've been sort of the beacon of sports, to my girls. But I also think, we're much more involved. And my mom always says to me, like, gosh, you guys make parenting so hard. Like, and I said, well, what do you mean? I just think you're trying not to be a helicopter parent, but you're also trying to help guide. And I think there's so much information now that you have to help them sift through. And you have to, what they do at, 12 years old with social media could impact them in their careers, in their future lives and relationships, that sort of thing. So I think the stakes feel higher. Maybe they're not. But I think I'm like my mom, and I try to be present. I try to go to all their sporting activities. My mom was always at, my swim meets, my tennis matches, all those things. And so I think just knowing that, I will always be there, even when I was busy at work. I would always make time to get to the softball games. I would always make time to get to the swim meets. And so I think like just being present is really important, but I do use my mom a little bit as a gauge of, okay, don't do too much. Like, for example, right now, my oldest daughter's looking for colleges, and I keep, it's her college. I'm not going to college again. It's her college. It's not where I want her to go. It's not where my husband wants her to go. It's not where her friends want her to go. It's where she wants to go, and it's going to work for her. And it's very hard because you like, do this, do this. Oh, this would be great for you. This would be great for you. And we talk about it, but it's really having to let her make her own decisions and do all that work herself, and realize that she has to live with those consequences. That's hard. I think my mom was much more comfortable being hands off, saying like, good luck. And I think I struggle with that a little bit more, but I'm trying.
So you brought up how you want to make sure that it's your daughter's decision here with college. And speaking of decisions and that it's yours or somebody else's, I was really interested. So you mentioned as well that auto racing was obviously a big part of your early career in sports media. Your mom got you involved in what auto racing was like. You brought that up as a teenager going to the Indy 500, and then that spawned this love affair with the sport that took you to ESPN. How much of your decision to go into sports, to go into auto racing and broadcasting, was from your mom's influence and what maybe she wanted you to do, comparatively to you internally finding within yourself to say, this is what I want to do?
I think it was passion. We just shared the passion. So it kind of conveniently, worked together. But I just it's rare, and I feel very fortunate that at 14 I was like, this is it. I wanted, and I looked around at things. I looked at a sanctioning body. I looked at local news. I looked at all these different things. And then I finally found sports, auto racing, television production. Like got very, niche very quickly, but I knew that that was what made me happy. And it was just fun to have her be so excited. And I told her, I said, someday I'm going to get you sweet tickets for the Indianapolis 500 because I'm going to be working there and I'm going to give this back to you. And I was able to do that. And it was just such a wonderful feeling. And it was wonderful to be able to call her on my way home every night. And, she'd talk to me more about sports sometimes than she would about her own grandchildren, which always made me laugh. Like, did you see what Jimmy Johnson did on the racetrack? Can you believe he's retiring and all this kind of stuff? So Jimmy Johnson, the race car driver, sorry, not the other Jimmy Johnson.
There's a couple of Jimmy Johnsons.
Yeah. But I mean, so I don't think I ever thought I was doing it for her, but I felt like we were always together in that passion, and that's what was really fun. And it really was nerve-wracking to tell her that it was nerve-wracking when I told her I was going to leave motorsports, and I had a career in motorsports at ESPN for about 8 years. And then I moved over into studio production, news gathering, sports center. So not really motorsports. And that was probably a harder decision to tell her that I was moving out of motorsports, but staying at ESPN than it was to tell her I was going to retire and ask her advice on, what do you think about my retiring from ESPN? But she's what a mom is. She's supportive, and she's like, if you're going to be happy, I'm going to be happy. And I just have always felt that. But it was a really, really fun time to be able to do all that together. And to know that, my success, my joy, my passion for this job, she shared. And that's always been very, very fun.
What do you recall, like when you first got that moment to where you were able to, you'd said, hey, one day we're going to take you to these events, I'm going to work them and you're going to have the greatest time. When you rate your happiness in the industry, and, you've helped so many people along the way, and that goes without saying, but how would you rate the joy on your mom's face when you got to follow through on those desires for the first time, and then to hear what she had to say right after that?
No, it was, I mean, she just is the ultimate and proud mother, and I feel sorry for any plumber or contractor or anybody who comes into her house, because if they have any interest in sports, the next words out of her mouth was, my daughter works at ESPN. So, but you gotta love that, right? So that was, I love that she was proud of it, but I also really appreciated, I was fearful that she would be disappointed that I was retiring. And it made me feel good that, she just wants me to be happy. And she's like, you can never take away that career that you had. You had a wonderful career. It just happens to be now you're moving on to something else. And she's kind of excited to see what that is. But she's a traditional mom too. She's like, well, now you can spend more time with your girls. And I'm like, it's not that I don't think I was a bad mom when I was working. I don't feel like I missed out and now I have to come back and make up for that. I really worked hard at trying to do both at the same time. It's just now, I'm less distracted and I'm able to do, more things with them. But I don't want to ever, I want to let other women know that you can have a great career and be a mom and have a life at the same time. It's harder, and you have to work at it. And some days you feel like you're not doing your job justice, and some days you feel like you're not doing your family justice. But you just kind of do that every day. And I think people will understand that. And I think my mom understood that I'd given a lot in this career, and I was really happy with it, and felt like I'd kind of reached an end point, and I didn't need to keep doing it for her. And I really appreciated her reinforcing that to me.
Your self-worth, as you mentioned, like being a mom and tailoring to those needs of your children, and then being a hard worker and working 24/7, how much of when you were in the throes of working at ESPN, do you attach your self-identity to your work? And then how do you find a way to then sort of suit the needs of being a mom and feeling fulfilled in that realm as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like what I said. You try to one might need you more at one time, and then another one needs you more at another time. And so I think the hard part is just staying attuned to which one needs you more at each time, and I've always heard people say, you're never going to regret that one project you didn't do, but you might regret missing this thing in your kid's life, or whatever, or your family life. And so I always tried to keep that in mind, that, you know, I need to try to keep both going. And it's sort of like those plates in the air. You just kind of, when one starts to wobble, you kind of go and you give that maybe a little bit more attention, but you still kind of have your eye over here. So, I mean, I don't know about self-worth, but, they both things provided a lot of, stimulation, a lot of pride, a lot of, just like I would want to see my kids, grow and learn and get to those next steps. Nothing made me happier than seeing talented people get promoted, get their work, recognized, feel great about what they did. I mean, that to me was better than, maybe we'd have great shows, we'd have a million great shows, right? But I loved seeing people grow. It really, I think being a parent made me a better manager. I think, because you're not parenting them, but you're trying to guide them without telling them what to do all the time. And that's kind of what you do as a parent. You're trying to set examples, you're trying to instill philosophies and really give them the tools for them to do the job the best they can without you. Like, for me to be most successful at my job, I shouldn't have to do anything. That's true success, is when the people that are all doing their jobs are doing them so well, they don't need me. I'm not sure every manager looks at things that way, but to me, that was success, was that, they know exactly what to do. They're doing a great job. And my job was then to advocate for them to make sure they got recognized, they got rewarded, they got that next step. They had somebody looking out for their careers. And so I sort of feel like the same way with my kids. It's my job to sort of, okay, what colleges do you want to go visit? I will make that happen, but you've got to tell me where you want to go. And where, I ask the questions and probe, it's not just, do you want that next step just because it's the next promotion, or do you really like that job? Do you want to go to this school because it's prestigious, or do they really have the programs that you want to, accomplish? So it's sort of, I felt like they were very similar, honestly.
Final question for you, given off what you just said. When your daughters get into college, those will be tears of joy. To this stage in your life, how many tears of joy moments have you had?
Wow. Well, I cry at the drop of a hat. So that is, I cry at commercials. I think I have overactive tear ducts. That's what, because I cry at everything. I cry at music. I mean, you play music on something, you give me a tribute for anybody, and I'm just bawling. Like, I can't, if I watch any of this Queen tribute stuff, I'm going to start crying. Especially sports. I mean, even just, I remember during the pandemic, some of the marketing spots that ESPN that we would put out there, just like, the love of sports. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm tearing up. So it's hard. I don't know that I could say, what really, there's one moment, I just think that I've enjoyed so much. I am an emotional person. I think I bring that emotion and that passion to home life, to work life, to golf, to whatever I do. And so, to see me cry is not, it's not hard. It happens a lot.
To think that, to use an athlete that you mentioned earlier in our conversation, Jimmy Johnson, in a way, you have his competitive fire, you working in sports, and you have been in the driver's seat of so much of what you've done. And it's so cool to hear all of your influences, Jill, and the way in which your mom, and how you've gotten to a point where she got me into it, but she's letting me be. She's letting me be. She's not living, I mean, she's living vicariously through you in a good way, but she's not like running your life through you, and has been like all of us, some of your greatest fans and spectators on the sidelines of your life, just to cheer you on. And I hope you know that that's a big reason why I wanted you to be on, is to know that there are a lot of people out there rooting you on, cheering you on from the sidelines. And I really think that we got to the gist of all the things that you're about in this conversation. Jill Frederickson, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thank you so much for taking us deep inside your life, learning about your philosophies and your mentality and motherhood and all of those things that make you who you are.
Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate it.